Good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to be on the stage with Dr. Jones as he shares about a program that he began at Clemson University, Call Me Mister. And we had a great opportunity last night to chat over our meal as we were celebrating First Gen Day, which was awesome, about what it is and why it is that this program is so important, invaluable, and how it's across many different colleges and universities, and really what it takes to expand this program and bring it to so many places where we have colleges of education, where we certainly need more representation of African American males, men of color, going into what I think is a great profession, the world of teaching. As a teacher, and Dr. Jones and I talked about that, I was telling him a little bit about myself. I said, I was like 5 and 6 years old playing school, and I'm not sure if that's normal or atypical, but certainly education was really important to me in being a teacher. And we talked about having good role models and how important it is to have role models. So Dr. Jones, I told you I wanted to start with, a little bit about you and how you got into this profession and your path and journey into the work that you do at Clemson.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate Career Promise Institute for the invitation. So if I mess up, you can blame Dr. Cloud, the invitation, because I wanted to see, I was curious to know at the very start where we would fit in this particular institute, because so much of the focus is on STEM and healthcare. But after that conversation, it was clear, and after being here now for a day, it's clear where it fits. In fact, I heard several things throughout the day that resonate with Call Me Mister. And I'll get into that a little bit and try to answer your question first. I am actually a native originally of Massachusetts. I spent the first third of my life there, coming out of Western Mass. Last night resonated with me because I am also first gen, with parents that strongly emphasize education. And it was so interesting because as I was growing up, it was a long time before I realized that neither of my parents graduated from high school. And so education was something of value to them, though they didn't know how to, the technical aspects of getting through school. And so oftentimes they would threaten me to get through my lesson, and I couldn't leave the table unless I got through the lesson, though they weren't able to necessarily assist me to get through the lesson. So there was a lesson in that whole process that I will never forget, even to this day.
And you had siblings and some different pathways for your siblings.
Yes.
So
I am the only surviving sibling at this point. I'm neither the youngest nor the oldest. Yes, when we were growing up, there was a time, and I heard it earlier, where a college education was not necessary. My siblings and many of my nieces and nephews finished high school and was able to immediately go into the job force with skills. So they had skill sets. So my oldest brother became was a draftsman, an expert draftsman, and he learned that coming out of high school. I had other siblings that my sister and others came through school and worked in retail or insurance. And I never remember one conversation about going to college. Now, understand, I didn't grow up in Mississippi. I grew up in Massachusetts. So here I'm in Springfield, Massachusetts. At the corner of the street where I grew up was a college. And the only thing I knew about that college was how to get from one end of town to the next and cutting through that college. That's the closest I came. No one ever explained what it was or why it was there. It was just sort of a nice, well-kept grounds The buildings were all brick, but that was it. But I also came through a time that was a tremendous upheaval because I'm a product of the '60s. So when Dr. King was assassinated, it changed the world for many of us. And UMass Amherst came running and got many of us out of Boston and Springfield and Worcester and to attend UMass Amherst. And so we were among the first rebels at UMass. 18,000 students. When I arrived, there were only 12 black students at UMass. Our class was 128. 20, less than 30 of us graduated 4 years later. So, and there's all kind of stories I can tell you about that, but that's not for this place here. But First Gen meant a lot. And
Kind of laid the foundation to a lot of the work that you did.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No question. I had great mentors. That word was expressed many times throughout the day. Mentoring, that was my first experience, being menteed and having mentors, and tremendous educators at the UMass Amherst. Very few coming through K-12. I can only recall one black male teacher coming through public school.
I only had one in high school.
And mine was in junior high school. In fact, now that you mention it, I didn't have any in high school. So it was, it's something you reflect on later, not necessarily the implications at the time you're going through it. But all of that, as you say, was part of the personal inventory and personal capital I think we brought to call me Mister.
So tell us about your role at Clemson, and let's talk. We love data at College Promise. So you're at Clemson. You're in the College of Education.
Yes.
And so talk to me about what did that data look like? What were your classes like? What were the students like that made you think there's a gap and I want to help fill this gap?
Well, that's a great question, but I want everybody to repeat context. Everybody say context.
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 Context matters.
Context matters.
Context matters because the question is great, but without the backstory and understanding what Call Me Mr. means, especially at Clemson University. And as I remember, I'm in Tennessee, and Tennessee is a southern state. South Carolina is a southern state, and there's a connectivity that I want to make there. My life in South Carolina didn't start at Clemson. I've been there 20 years. I'm a tenured professor in the College of Education and Ed Leadership. Clemson is the headquarters of Call Me Mister. But I need to go back 23 years, because we're 23 years into our program. And the program, within the context, launched in 2000. And at the time, I was actually at the College of Charleston, in Charleston. And then I moved, that's when I first started. And then I moved on to become dean at Claflin University, an HBCU, historically black college university in Orangeburg. And we were trying to get to national accreditation for our teacher education program. So the connection with Clemson is that Clemson and the three private HBCUs in South Carolina formulated this collaboration to launch Call Me Mister, which essentially, and don't mistake, Mister is not a gender designation. Mister stands for Mentors Instructing Students Toward Effective Role Models. So understand the focus back in 2000, what we learned, what research learned that in the state of South Carolina, which was up until more recently, was 1/3 African American. And even that's a story, because at one time, the state of South Carolina was majority black. So think about that for a moment. The state of South Carolina at one time was majority, and when I say majority, 2/3 black, as was many other southern states. So, but during our lifetime, about 1/3 black in South Carolina. But teaching at the elementary level, of which there were 600 schools served by 20,000 teachers, only 1% of the workforce at the elementary were black men. Now, I'm no math genius, and I know there's a STEM population here, but simple arithmetic, that was 200 black males serving in 600 schools among 20,000 teachers in a state that's 1/3 black. That's why we have many students that came through their K-12 that have never had a black male teacher. But black males are most suspended, expelled for discipline, dropping out, and terminated than any other population at that time. So basically, the collaboration involving Clemson and Claflin University, Morris College, and Benedict College collaborated to launch Call Me Mister, to focus on getting black males at the elementary school in early childhood education in South Carolina. So again, 200 black males in elementary school, which means quick arithmetic, out of 600 schools, that mean that we looked at it, 500 out of the 600 did not have a single black male teacher in it. And it didn't matter where the school was, whether it was rural, urban, island schools. And so we felt that there was a need to address that. And if you dial back 25 years, there was a lot of conversation about black males being an endangered species. You might have heard some of that conversation, that they were disappearing in many ways for many different reasons. And no one really was talking about diversifying elementary schools with black males or brown males or any colored folk. But that was the challenge at the time. Someone said that education is the great equalizer, and really the greatest challenge of our time is the battleground is in education. And history can teach us a lot about that. So we went to work. And basically, we also recognized that in South Carolina, no one was coming to save us but us, that we couldn't rely on Massachusetts or New York or California or Michigan to come and address our teacher shortage in South Carolina. We had developed a GYO, a grow your own strategy in South Carolina, meaning that we looked at a collaboration of the school districts to two-year colleges and four-year colleges to create a pipeline where a student can come in from any doorway and become certified teachers.
So talk about that first meeting, the GYO, Grow Your Own. You looked at, of course, the statistics. You all got together and thought about how to figure out the pipeline or pathway approach. What was that first meeting like, and what were some of the topics you covered? Obviously, thinking back to that time, but I don't think it's very different from right now. I mean, we have more in the educator pipeline, but we know we've also have a massive shortage in many places and spaces. So what was that first meeting like, and what did you talk about? I know there are 3 words I read on the website about educate, empower, and trust, which I think is fascinating, the trust word too. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, the shortage, we're still addressing the shortage. We were addressing it 23 years ago. We're addressing it today. And it's a shortage across the board, not just of black males, but of teachers across the board. One of the things that I heard earlier, again, that resonates is leadership. We first had to have leadership at the institutional level. So the collaboration was a collaboration and commitment among presidents of the 3 original 4 institutions in South Carolina. That has not broken. I mean, it's still in the presidents have changed. I've been around long enough that I've seen every president of the original colleges have come and gone. We're new presidents, new deans, and the important thing is to understand sustainability when you're talking about institutional commitment. And it's not just individual champions, but institutional commitment that is committed to sustaining the effort, especially talking 23 years. So the 4 original institutions that were committed have now grown to 28 institutions in South Carolina, all formally formulate a network of colleges where students can come. So we have colleges all throughout South Carolina, and we have and the message has become resonated outside of South Carolina, where we have 12 states and a total of 44 institutions altogether, including the great state of Tennessee, where one of our partners, the University of Tennessee in Martin, up in the hills. We've got a great cohort of students there. Now, this is the thing. We don't recruit in isolation, onesies and twosies. We actually create a culture of pre-service teachers that formulate a cohort. So our commitment is that students are committed to pursuing teaching as a career. So they have to major in a teacher education program. Now it's K through 12, you can do that. And also that they formulate a co-curricular commitment. So what does that mean? It means that most of what we do, the one-on-one mentoring, the cohort mentoring, the development of our students are done as a part of a co-curriculum, and they're also living and learning.
I was going to say, and there's some summer components. So
summer we do. We're 12-month. We're 24/7. So we do internships during the summer, paid internships. We do leadership institutes as well. We bring in scholars as well as serve 6 or 7 sites throughout the state where our pre-service teachers are developing their skill sets and developing their dispositions. Again, we're talking about primarily Black males who many have come not in traditional homes, from traditional home sets, but from often not only single-parent homes, but from dysfunctional homes, and not with a very strong commitment and good feeling about their K-12 experience that as part of their story. And so we don't get students that are ready to step in the classroom once we recruit them. We have to develop their dispositions and help them develop their story, because whatever their experience and background is part of their story.
Part of what we learned this morning, thinking about belonging and the social interventions, talk a little bit about that. I was fascinated by that conversation earlier today, thinking about what we have to do to make sure and ensure that our students on the campuses, being a part of a program like this, is very important, but building those social capital elements to what it is that they're feeling and experiencing, especially given some of the diverse backgrounds that they're coming from and what they've experienced in their home environments. You and I talked about school last night and how everybody has an opinion on school. And if you had a good teacher, then you thought it was a great experience. If you didn't, it might have been a bad experience. And so changing the mindset also about the young men who are thinking about this as a profession.
Well, when you think about your own development, and you didn't develop in isolation. You didn't develop without a support system. When you think about it, we were all. I would be not telling you the truth if I told you that my success was a complete result of my own fortitude, which is part of it. But no, it had to do with people who were invested in development. And when you're talking about the populations that we're addressing, you can't be faint of heart, because there are a lot of things that students do to test you in terms of whether or not you are genuinely, sincerely committed to their development. And it doesn't take long for them to figure out whether or not you're authentic and genuine enough, and they will chase you out before you get to where you think you need to be with them. So our program develops the culture around a living learning community. So we were one of the first living learning communities at Clemson University. They talk about living learning LLCs now all the time, but we were among the first, which where our students come in and they're housed in dormitories, and we develop a peer leadership. One of the strongest things that we often forget is that a lot of the leadership, a lot of the development can come from the students themselves, with guidance and direction. So the one-on-one is important because the one-on-ones we do every week, our coordinators meet with our students one-on-one, and they also have our cohort meetings every week. And we've got it to the point now where even if I'm not there, or my coordinators aren't there, if we're traveling, they still have the meeting. And they still have the meeting, consistent with whatever the objective is for that evening.
How big is your team? And at the other colleges and universities, how big is the support staff and team for the students?
Yeah, you would have to ask that, wouldn't you?
It's in your slides.
Our
too.
full-time team is, and I do want to get to a slide or two.
He has slides.
Is just there's just 6 of us full-time at Clemson, but our network of our 28 institutions in South Carolina, we call site coordinators at every campus. They're actually employed by the campuses, but they have to give up at least a percentage of their time to work with the Call Me Mr. cohort, and they follow the same commitment at every institution. And we have license agreements between Clemson and our Clemson University Research Foundation. It licenses and develops formal licenses with every one of our colleges, and both whether they're in state or out of state. And so we want to protect the brand because it's trademarked, and it's you can't use it to sell cheeseburgers. I mean, we have a trademark brand, so it's all really coordinated that way. We have, in fact, I just got a message. We have a national retreat in South Carolina where all of our partners come together, and we talk about what's going on in each one of our campuses and provide the kind of development and training, if you will, and to support our coordinators to go back. And not every institution campus is the same. We have faith-based private institutions, moderate, medium-sized public institutions, as well as some of the larger institutions. In fact, we're in the process now, one of our most recent pending licenses is LSU. And so
Exciting.
we've got several institutions in Louisiana, including Grambling. So we've got a number of, we've built a network, and I'm unapologetic about any population, and this is among the, in terms of leadership and development, we promote education as a career. The profession is challenged. We have the baby boomers that are moving out, and it's hard to see how we're going to replace in public school the educators that are necessary. But I can tell you that since Misters started to graduate in 2004, 85% of our Misters are still serving in public school classrooms. 12% are principals or assistant principals, and there's a 2% are teaching our teacher education professors, leading teacher education programs. I've got 28 principals and assistant principals. I've got Misters now that are leading schools that are hiring Misters. So we're talking about not a fly-by-night here in Dow just for the opportunity, but actually looking at transforming public education in South Carolina. So
and
that's
beyond, and beyond,
beyond,
and beyond.
And it's resonated because we've demonstrated that a system that works.
Well, share a few of your slides, Dr. Jones, with us, please.
Glad to.
It's working. This morning we saw it was a little.
I can stand up, please.
Yes, please.
This first slide, we named it the legacy of intentionality. That left corner on the bottom represents our very first Call Me Mr. class. When we first got started back in 2000, they said we really didn't have a snowball's chance to attract a 18-year-old black male to be a third grade or second grade teacher. And we proved them wrong. Now, the honesty of it is that we didn't have, recruitment wasn't the problem. Everyone says it's going to be recruitment. You're not going to be able to find any. Everybody says you can't find it, you can't find. Well, we found a lot because not everybody could throw a ball, dribble a ball, or hit a baseball. Some actually were caring for their siblings at home, had dispositions that lent itself to become tremendous educators. So this was our first meeting of our first class. This is before they even entered into, this is in the summer of 2000. They were getting ready to enter into their freshman year at Claflin University, Morris College, or Benedict College. Again, MR stands for Mentors Instructing Students to Effective Role Models. This is the mission that we had in 2000 and still is the mission, to increase the pool of available teachers from a broader, more diverse background, particularly among the state's lowest performing elementary schools. Student participants are largely selected from among underserved, socioeconomically disadvantaged, and at-risk communities. It is expected that a mister who completes his program of study and becomes certified to teach must teach for every year in a public school for every year they get support from the Call Me Mr. program.
So let's double click on that. How does that work for students?
From the very start, we offer tuition assistance, which is the incentive. So when you think about, Clemson University plays football. You may not know that.
We were unaware.
And I think they do here too. I wanted to bring it up before anybody else did, because we lost in the Orange Bowl to Tennessee. But we won't dwell on that. We'll see them again. But that's the point. They get incentivized. And I bring up football because no one ever questions the support that a scholarship football player receives to play football. And all we're saying is that, look, we're trying to develop master teachers, and they deserve to have incentives to provide. So we provide that, but they have to give back in service, meaning they have to teach in a public school for every year they receive support from the Call Me Mr. program, and it has worked. And we have a doorway, so you can come in as a two-year college. Our state is technical colleges, the same as community junior colleges. You can start it there because of affordability or academic need, and transfer into a four-year program. So it doesn't matter, and in some cases, you can start at a master's degree. President Clements, our current president, has been an advocate and cheerleader for Call Me Mr. And he talks about it all the time, about it being one of Clemson's premier programs. Our former founding dean says our teacher population should mirror the population of students that it serves. And that's a commitment. So the college, I point this out because Clemson's commitment to this program has been sustained through several leaders. And I point that out because our current dean, who just started 2 months ago, is here with is pictured here with our misters at a recent event we had on campus. We're talking about license agreements. We're on the steps of the State House in South Carolina. The South Carolina State House, the South Carolina Legislature is one of our biggest supporters in terms of providing funding for the Call Me Mr. program. That's the South Carolina State Legislature in South Carolina. And we were commemorating our 20th anniversary. So it was Call Me Mr. Day in Columbia, South Carolina, by the State House in the Department of Education. I went over these stats, but basically the 20,000 to 600 Mr. Teachers since 2004. We've graduated 379, fully certified, just fully certified, meaning they've completed a full program. Enrolled currently 195. We had 3 institutions, Call Me Mr. in 2000, 28 in South Carolina. And when we started in 2000, Clemson University had 1 black male in KL8 that they graduated. Since then, Clemson University has graduated 68 black males to Call Me Mr. program. You got to walk the talk. These are our partners. If any of, wherever your states may be, well, this is all the South Carolina partners, and it just gives you a range of our 4-year colleges, our 2-year colleges, our HBCUs. And then here are our national partners. You can see there, again, Tennessee should be on here as well. Tennessee's missing, but I guarantee you that University of
Well, that's what you led with yesterday. You said, yeah, Tennessee's a part of it too.
Tennessee
Yeah.
and Martin,
Yeah.
sure. We become a national model, educate, empower, trust. That's a period, educate, empower, period, trust, period, are the mantra for Call Me Mister. This is just a slide that depicts the collaboration between the school districts, the Grow Your Own model, involving 2-year colleges and 4-year colleges, encompass the entire Grow Your Own process. These are, again, pictures of most of these guys that come from out of South Carolina State, for example, that have been ambassadors for the Call Me Mr. program, invited all over the country to share the experience. And also, this in particular slide was our Call Me Mr. showcase, where we had to come to the realization, working with our school districts, that the beneficiaries of our teachers are the school districts. And what was happening is that school districts running all over trying to find teachers. And we're saying, look, your future teachers are sitting in your classrooms every day. The problem is that no one has ever talked about cultivating and developing. No one ever looked at, a kid in the 12th grade, 10th grade, 9th grade and said, you would make a great teacher and work with them. In fact, we have found just the opposite, that we've had educators discourage students not to become educators. The biggest. I
think we're like our own PR marketing nightmare educators sometimes.
Yes.
When I think about it, right? They say, don't do it, do something else. And
exactly.
It's like, everybody came from a teacher, right? Everything happens.
Parents say that we will not support you going to college if you become if you want to be a teacher.
Well, Dr. Jones and I talked about that at dinner last night. I disclosed to him that my parents were not excited about me going into English education. And I said, well, I have to follow my dreams. I've got to do it. But they wanted me to do something definitely different.
Make money.
And it's okay. It's okay. We're all making money.
It's a real bizarre kind of situation.
Yeah.
This is just a diagram of our conceptual framework involving the co-curriculum and all the components that are involved. It's a very complex system that's very simple, actually. These are all very involved in the development process.
When you look at that, graphic, where are some of the challenges when you look at what you've built, and of course what's being transferred in many places and spaces in that design and model? What are some of the challenges that you're seeing or have seen and solved?
Belief system. Once we have identified a mister to be involved in the program, it becomes a challenge to get them committed to their own development. And to be honest, because there's a lot of students come that are still first generation or have very limited exposure to higher education. And if you're talking about, we've got our programs at Claflin University, HBCU in Orangeburg, and Clemson University up in the hills in Pickens County, in upstate. And Clemson and Claflin have very different histories. So many students coming into a HWCU from a black community in an institution that has not been historically attracting black students, that's a challenge in itself.
Right.
Whereas at Claflin University is may be different, a college of Charleston may be different. So a lot of it is developing their story, really helping them understand that they have cachet, that they have assets, virtues, abilities, and skills, and really developing that. And shaking off some of the things that are holding them back, things that they've learned from mama and them that
Right.
doesn't necessarily
Translate well
translate
into
exactly.
college life.
So a lot of it's development.
Okay.
Then the academic piece is easy. Now I say that at the same time that the initial exams to get into teacher education, the Praxis Core, for example, is a devastating hurdle for many of our students. Now you think about that. Praxis Core, reading, writing, and arithmetic, something that they should have mastered in K-12, they struggle with at the freshman level. And if you don't pass Praxis Core, you can't get into the major. And then you got to pass Praxis 2 or PLT even. So that's a big hurdle as well. So getting past the deficit of the K-12 system to get them into even a position. Now, the carrot is that we have 100% employment rate.
Wow.
100%. That's 100.
It's wonderful.
100.
Wow.
Since 2004, we've not had. There used to be a time when we've had misters that had multiple job offers. I remember a time when I had a mister that had 25 job offers.
Incredible.
25. We had superintendents wanted to recruit our students before they graduated. That's how much it's challenged. See, if they know they're prepared, and we just getting past Praxis Core,
Right.
the rest is easy.
Well, yesterday the chancellor, opened up and talked about, thinking about confidence, and I think it ties so beautifully to what you're talking about in terms of belief. I think it's, yes, we have some academic opportunity to, of course, strengthen skills, but the belief and the confidence to believe that you can do and will do are things that we still need to solve for and support our students with. And so we did open up and talk about that yesterday. And I think it's important. We know everybody's not coming from the same learning community, but believing that you can, it's a whole nother, entity that we need to really embrace for our students.
You all right with time?
I think
we've got a couple of minutes.
Couple
it depends
minutes.
on if you want to take questions.
yes.
No, absolutely.
Yes. Thank you.
This is the cover of our book, so I'm not ashamed to promote that. But it's only because the cover of the book, the visual, is a story. What do most of you see? What does anyone want to share? Just a word or two. What do you see? Pardon? Black men, absolutely. Yes, sir. Very good. That's an old, but it's not a worn down house.
Schoolhouse. I think
Who
her
said it?
schoolhouse.
It is a school building. Context matters. This is a school building that sits on a church property. If you look on the other side, there's a Baptist church, a cemetery in Townville, South Carolina. It's one of the thousands of schools that were built with the Rosenwald Foundation in cooperation with black communities. It was built by hand of the black community, built this schoolhouse, which is about two room schoolhouse. That's the actual schoolhouse, hoping to see it be renovated into an original form. But this was built in 1935. And it still sits on that property. There were 5,000 of them built throughout the 17 southern states. So it's a reminder, and that's why we have these misters, that they're looking dapper there, but when they were freshmen, they didn't look like that. But the two of the guys on the left are elementary, award-winning elementary teachers. The young man on the right is a STEM teacher, one of the best in the state. Is now heading a program at Morehouse, in fact. The two young men on the left were exceptional teachers, became principals as well. Really transformative principals. So it's just to remind us from whence folks came, and the struggle in South Carolina was not an easy one. So I just wanted to point that out. There's a whole story behind that. So with that,
I know we probably have a few questions. Dr. Jones, it's been wonderful getting to know you. I'm coming to Clemson. We're going to do a tour. We're going to make sure we meet some of those great students of yours. Please thank Dr. Jones for his time and his knowledge, sharing the history with us. And we'll take one or two questions if we can.
Yep, here's one right here.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jones. I appreciate all the insight regarding the Mr. Initiative. My question is, how from Buffalo, New York, as a native, how can this program be implemented in New York State and in Buffalo? Because I just recently finished my master's in education with a concentration in adolescent education.
Very good.
Thank you. With a concentration in history, I apologize. And, this is a journey for myself to, go through all the nuances in terms of finding a master's program, the cost, finances, things of that nature. And I talked about supporting CAS yesterday, but I believe a program like this that just emphasizes and places an emphasis on your supporting CAS. So having a program like this, I wish that it was something in New York State. So I guess my question is, how can we implement this program in New York State?
I can quickly respond to that, and thank you for sharing that. It's very encouraging. It's warmer in the South, in case you would want to move. But it's interesting. We're open to that. Now, it does take, you have to have a post-secondary institution to collaborate. So, and we're so committed to development in the South, but the closest institution to you is in Virginia, at Longwood University there. But I'm certainly open to anybody that is in a college of ed program that want to talk to us. We have a process that we can go through, but that's where you would really start. The other option is that if students from New York wanted to attend an institution that is already a Call Me Mr. institution, we can talk about how to do that as well, especially if they're interested in going back home. We're not interested in taking anybody from home. That's the whole point, is to grow your own and where you are. I will say this, because you mentioned Buffalo. Buffalo has an interesting history, and for a lot of reasons. But there's a church there called the Delane Waring AME Church. And just a 30-second history lesson, because next year marks the 70th anniversary of the Brown v. Board school desegregation case. And that case actually started with the first case, because Brown versus Board was made up of 5 cases. The first case was South Carolina, Briggs versus Elliott in Clarendon County. In fact, a law firm just submitted a petition to change the name of Brown versus Board to Briggs versus Elliott, because it was the very first case in school segregation case. Brown was much later, but it started in South Carolina. The reason I mentioned Buffalo is because one of the leaders of that whole movement was Reverend J.A. Delane, who was a teacher and a pastor, AME pastor, who was chased out of South Carolina unceremoniously in 1955 and never returned. He wound up in New York and wound up in Buffalo, was one of his first assignments in Buffalo. And J. Waddies Waring, and there's a law school across the street, I mentioned it too, J. Waddies Waring was the judge, the federal judge in the Briggs-Elliott case in Charleston that wrote the dissenting opinion in that case that formed the foundation of the argument that won the Brown versus Board of Education case. So knowing your history, knowing your context, that what matters. And Buffalo has and I had someone from there who was a member of the Delane Waring Church that attended our 3rd annual Joseph A. and Maddie Delane lecture at Clemson. As a member of that church. So I told him my my to-do list is getting to Buffalo to visit that particular church. So you got a connection there that we should talk about.
We've got one more question over here before we wrap up.
Hello, Dr. Jones.
Hello.
I wanted to ask, as someone who didn't have their first Black teacher until my first year at Howard University, can you touch on the benefits that you've assessed from students who are actually learning from a mister?
Outstanding. That's more than a few minutes we got. And I'll be glad to talk to you a sidebar on that one. I'll give you one example because it's the fresh one on my mind, and it symbolizes the answer. I got here, I couldn't make it yesterday because I let the folks know that I had a dissertation, I'm on the dissertation defense committee. One of my students that successfully defended his dissertation got his EDD. This young man graduated out of Morris College, couldn't read up to third grade, had to find creative ways to avoid reading. And till the teacher noticed that there was something going on with him and figured it out and got him on the path so he could finish school. Dropped out in sixth grade. Didn't get his first commendation until eighth grade of achievement. Dysfunctional family. One of the dedications he made in his dissertation was to his brother, who is currently incarcerated. Grew up in a drug-related situation. This young man is a principal of a school in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And before he became principal, however, he was teacher of the year, expert in reading, taught second grade, a district teacher of the year, became assistant principal and principal of the school that he's heading right now. That school for 20, and I told Dr. Kander this, that school for over 20 years was scoring below standard, underperforming for 24 straight years. Could not. Largely high poverty, better than 9% minoritized population, a lot of transients. In 4 years, he brought the school for the first time to meeting standard. That was last year. This year, he just got the test results, and that school has gotten to excellent level for his performance level. And I use that example because it's a combination of the power of leadership, a educator that understood how to lead other educators, and perseverance. And this young man is married with 2 kids and can walk to school from his school in the hood in Spartanburg. High poverty. He told me that he can't get parents, I'm talking about parents, get parents to sign off on permission slips to allow their kid to go on field trips, which is free. And for whatever reason, he cannot get, despite their best efforts, that kind of engagement because of the cultural issues around that. High poverty, better than 90% poverty index, low wealth, and but what he's done as a single educator, and I say one mister can make a difference. And we've got multiple examples. Like, in fact, these young men right here, the same way. Turnaround School, Mellenchamp, principal in the middle, Hayward John, took the same school in the same neighborhood in Orangeburg, South Carolina, did the very same. In fact, his test scores in the state of South Carolina had turned around so much in 1 year that the state held back the scores, thinking that there was fraud and cheating going on. They held his score for recounts and to ensure that the investigation didn't show fraud. And when they finally discovered that, no, it was real, turned around in 1 year. I asked him what he did. He said, "Doc, I misterized him." And that's what I'm saying to you.
Thank you, Dr.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Taylor, for facilitating such a great discussion.